观众、各位听众，大家好，欢迎来到这一期的科技产业新知沙龙。那我们这一次呢，很高兴邀请到我们 PwC 德国的一位非常资深的合伙人。那Marcus 呢，在这个整个科技产业半导体产业有30年以上的经验。那里面比较特别的是，他有15年以上在产业的经验，在我们 PwC 目前在我们的这个专门在提供企业的策略顾问strategy 这个 consulting 的部分呢，是我们的一个重要的 lead partner。那我们今天的主题呢，主要来针对整个我们知道欧盟推出了这个重要的晶片法案。那现在在半导体这个产业呢，大家都非常重视这个供应链的自主。那欧盟也希望强化自己的这个半导体的能力。那也推出了很多新的一些政策。那我们今天特别邀请 Marcus 来跟我们分享一下欧洲在这一个半导体产业的一些观察。那我们可以做一些深入的一些探讨。Okay, so very delighted to have you here with us, Marcus. So I think maybe First, I would like to invite you to say hi and maybe introduce yourself to our audiences.
你好, Mark Paulsen. Really happy and appreciated to be here with you today. I guess the topic and the times are really interesting, and let's say we are on what I'm working. I'm now about 30 years in the electronic semiconductor industry. And let's say at the moment, the times are interesting because the industry is accelerating. Even I wouldn't believe it would be possible, but it's accelerating. It's getting a lot of attention, and we are transforming more or less with the digitization, every industry globally. Yeah, and that means that there's a lot of intention also by the government, how they transforming the industry. And we are, of course, helping, let's say, our clients, and our clients are, let's say, semiconductor players, but also the government and so on, to find a way and do the right things and to push forward on a powerful European but also global semiconductor supply chain. And happy to discuss this in more detail. I personally also did a lot of projects, especially in my first 15 years in my industrial career, also in Asia and in Taiwan, still highly connected to the scenery here, and more than happy to discuss today with you about the European semiconductor industry and the funding schemes behind this. As said, it's incredible funds. We will come to this later in more detail. We are not talking anymore about billions, but trillions of euros that are out to do business and to contribute to the society and our overall development.
Yes, perfect. So I guess maybe as a start for our audience to get into the context. So I think Taiwan, we all know that semiconductor industry is one of the most important industries for Taiwan, right? And I think for many years that the Taiwanese semiconductor industry sort of using Taiwan as a home base and then serve the global customers. And now, ever since this US and China trade war and then all this technology issues and pandemic causing this supply chain sort of crisis, right? So every country or every territory wanted to build its own safe supply chain, right? So we understand that US is obviously driving this kind of trend and to try to attract more semiconductor business to set up manufacturing footprint in the US. And I think Europe is doing a very similar thing. So I think a lot of Taiwanese business would be interested to know what is European agenda on this. And we know there are a lot of funding, let's say, projects, things like European Chip Act.
Yes.
is sort of in the process, and there will be a lot of opportunities for Taiwanese business to, let's say, to consider and maybe to invest into Europe. And so can you maybe share your view and then maybe just let us to have better understanding about this background and context?
Yeah, Paulson, very appreciating that. Let's probably start a little bit explaining what the industry or the semicon industry is in Europe and how it, let's say, is part of the overall value chain. And as you said, let's say, same as in Taiwan, the electronics and semiconductor industry in Europe is seen, let's say, as a very, very important key industry. And let me explain why is this. First of all, let's probably look to the current scenery we have in the semiconductor industry. And you know that we are, as Europeans, contributing about 8 to 10% to the overall global semiconductor production, which is still a lot. Yeah, but let's say if you look more to what you are doing in Taiwan there, newest, smallest structure technologies, memories and the like, you will probably see that the semiconductor industry in Europe is really, really different. Yeah, and the first thing is, let's say, if you are thinking about what are the main products semiconductor-wise that are produced or designed in Europe, you will find, for example, the three big players like Infineon, ST, and NXP. Infineon as the former Siemens Halbleiter, and NXP, for example, as the former Philips Semiconductor, yeah, and they are very much focused on power electronics. That means all what goes into electric powertrain, but all the power electronics, they are very much focused on sensors. Actually, Europe is leading in sensors, in opto, and also in microcontroller, especially if it goes to safety microcontroller and security chips. And these kind of chips are mainly used for IoT and for the industrial production. And that is one reason why it's so important for Europe, because you know that we are producing a lot of machines, equipment, automotive, and let's say also infrastructure equipment for the power transforming and generation and whatever. And then of course these chips and let's say the wider scene of IoT are incredibly important. Let me also name that there are aside these three big companies, there are a lot of other companies probably people know, but they are not aware of that. These are European companies. So for example, Bosch is the biggest MEMS sensor manufacturer of the world. Yeah, another player is Osram AMS as one of the biggest players in LED and opto and what you have 3D sensors for your mobile phones. Yeah, but there are other areas. Let's say, for example, in the UK, you have ARM. Everything is today based on ARM, of course. And even if you look to the newest generation of AI and the most advanced concepts of algorithms, you probably find the unicorn GraphCore in UK, which is also a semiconductor company. Around this, there are a lot of, let's say, institutes in the area of research, as the famous IMEC, where, let's say, all the semiconductor industry is collaborating and researching together, which is quite unique, but gives you a little bit an outlook. And then, of course, you know that there's Fraunhofer, that there's Max Planck Institute really doing basic research. So you see that for the Europeans, it's very important not only to have an individual point where they are operating in, but to contribute to the complete value chain in the sense of value chain for semiconductor, meaning that we are starting really in basic research. There's a very, very long history in Europe on this one, and leading this to the application. And this gives you already also very good explanation of basic principles of European funding of the semiconductor industry, because you never get funded as a single company. You always get funded in explaining how you will contribute to the overall value chain and what they call the so-called spillover effect, how you are teaming up with other players in the European community or globally and try to support the global and the European supply chain. So this is one very important anchor. It's a very important industry, and it's supporting the overall industry and transformation of Europe. But there's another dimension, and that is, I would say, it's a development of the last 5 or probably even 10 years along what you said about the trade wars and all the situation that came up. You know that there is this data protection law in Europe, and at the beginning people were really confused and said, hey, what is this? This will be a big disadvantage for Europe. And however, I guess meanwhile, people have studied and understood this also in Europe, but also in the rest of the world. And I guess it's meanwhile understood, hey, this is not a drawback, it is actually the way forward. We have to clarify who is owning the data, because the data are extremely important, and also to protect ourselves as individuals, as let's say individuals in a new digital world and in the digital twin of our world, and who we are as persons. And then, let's say, after enforcing this data protection law, they came across this, hey, and said, look, what does it mean if you are protecting your data, but you are not controlling how this data is transported over digital communication, or how this data is computed? And it came there, or emerged the idea of what we call digital sovereignty. That means if you want to stay, and this is true for Europe, for Taiwan, for whomever, sovereign, you must be the owner and under full control of generation of data, who is owning this data, who is transporting this data, and who is computing this data and storing this data. And this goes down even to microelectronic, because by this, the European Commission says that it is important to have own microprocessors, high-end, own AI microprocessors, own storage and so on, to make absolutely sure that the design is under control and that the design is done in a way to protect our data and our digital lives. This is the concept of digital sovereignty. And I guess taking these two elements, this explains more or less the complete European funding scheme.
Okay.
Yeah. And probably we go into this because you mentioned that there is, let's say, this European Chips Act, and let's say most people, of course, have heard about this and automatically combine this with semiconductor funding. And I will tell you a little bit about funding schemes in Europe in general, but let's say honestly, it is not the biggest one. Yeah? People are saying, hey, the European Chips Act, you know, it's about 43 billion. And people are saying, hey, looking to the US and so on, this is probably not so big. Yeah. But keep in mind what I just said, the Europeans are not looking to the semiconductor alone, they are looking to what it means overall. And you find a lot of funding schemes that are much, much bigger. And the biggest one is the European Recovery Fund. And this Recovery Fund is about 1.8 trillion euro, 1,800 billion euro. And it's the biggest funding that Europe has ever seen. And if you look into the Recovery Fund, people thought, hey, this is for COVID recovery or whatever. But if you study it carefully, there are only 3 or 4 major areas named that are the focus of this, and it's saying it is the next generation of digital technology and investment in strategic digital value chains, especially microprocessors. And if you now go back to the concept of digital sovereignty and supporting the core industry of Europe, then you understand the complete picture. The problem now is, or not really the problem, is that, let's say, you really have to have a lot of knowledge how Europe works and thinks about their industry to access this funding. That means just saying, hey, I'm a single firm and I want to invest in this one, yeah, will not work out, because you always have to bring to the European Commission the complete picture and explain how it will support over the industry, how it will be spilling over to other companies, how you are teaming up with other companies to make it sustainable. And that makes it sometimes so complex for people who are not aware of how this works. But if you understand where we are aiming and hunting for, then of course you understand the concept. By the way, it's also interesting, you know, one way could be that the European Commission could say, hey, we are designing the value chain and we are asking specific players to do this and this and this, and ask and reach out to Taiwanese companies directly. But this is not the European style, as you know, because the European Commission is always saying, we don't want to limit your idea, because we believe that the ideas outside the government are much brighter, much more colorful, and much more powerful. So it's an invitation to be creative. And then probably let's make the last angle out of this, Paulsen, and this is the point. Is this funding, this incredible amount of money that I just mentioned, is this intended now for European firms or American firms or Taiwanese firms and so on? And to be very honest, we are teaming up with a lot of players globally, helping them on getting the funding to find their way through Europe, to get the right funding programs, even down to what we call factory out of the box, really helping them to ramp it up and supporting the partnerships. And the funny thing about all this funding is it is not exclusively for European companies, not at all. That means Taiwanese companies would be heavily encouraged and invited to contribute to this, to contribute to the growth of Europe, but also to their own growth, of course. The only important thing is they must generate value in the EU, and they have to contribute to the society and the bigger political program of what is intended. Is everybody invited? To be also quite clear, looking to the most recent development, let's say only countries that are committing to democratic principles and free economy are invited. And of course, Taiwan is definitely such a country. And I guess we are just wondering where are the ideas and programs that are actually coming out of the Taiwanese industries. And I know already also some European players that are reaching out to Taiwanese players to make this happen. But really there is, money is there, the political vision is there, the ambition is there. I guess the European Commission said in the EU Compass that they want to grow from 8% global semiconductor share of Europe today to 20% very soon, which is, if you just count the numbers, it's really incredible. And this will not be possible on our own. This is only possible together also with investments from US, with partnerships from the US, and with Taiwanese partnerships. By the way, I mentioned before that in the funding scheme, people are always looking to how is the network behind this and what are the applications and the partnerships behind this. And so we have seen very, very interesting investment ideas from users of the technology. So let's make an automotive example. You know that the combustion engine is over and the electric drivetrain is coming. And so we see very big leading firms in the power semiconductor like silicon carbide or whatever, co-investing with automotive players, so actually with the application area. And if you now look to memory and high performance chips, AIs, it is a natural way forward that you are looking who is providing the clouds in Europe, the high performance computing center, the big applications in this area, financial service, public service infrastructure, and so on. And then you know exactly whom the European Commission would see you teaming up and showing how this is helping the overall industry. Quite complex, isn't it, Paulsen?
Thank you very much, Marcus. It's very, very, very insightful information. I think because the reason I said that is I think most of the business like me would think that what Europe wanted to do is similar to what US wanted to do, which is asking foreign companies to go into Europe, hire the employees in Europe at much higher cost, and then to produce chips in Europe. And I think that's sort of a typical view of what we believe that's what Europe wanted to drive. But actually from your view, I think the biggest word that you are sharing is collaboration, or building up a healthy ecosystem, combining European business with business all over the world, including Taiwan. And so I think that's a very, very, very important message, I think, for Taiwanese business to consider their strategy going forward. And obviously, like you said, that Europe offer a lot of great and important industry like automotives, like sensor industry, like you said, and there are, I think already a lot of Taiwanese business are teaming up with European business. But I think with all this very big funding, I think it definitely will accelerate a lot of business moves. So I think very, very great viewpoint. Yeah.
And Paulsen, let me add probably another aspect that is probably a big difference to other funding schemes globally. Because you said, other countries are inviting Taiwanese players and saying, hey, come here and produce there, and you have to, let's say, take the disadvantages or whatever. And let's say antitrust and competition is a very, very important principle for Europe. We strongly believe in this, also in global competition. And you might also know that funding, state funding and let's say government grants are in general not allowed in Europe because we don't want to do anything that is hindering competition. And so how all these funding schemes that I just mentioned are working, and that is very interesting and very important to understand, is that the European government is saying, hey, look, you are planning funding or a technology invest in this area, yeah? And we understand and accept if you would do the same in Europe, initially there is a gap, a finance gap, yeah? Because you have to have higher wages, you have to blah, 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 whatever. But at the end, let's say after 10 years or whatever, you must be globally competitive. But the gap of the first 10 years, the disadvantage you would have at the beginning in Europe, that is exactly the funding. That means it's not a tax scheme or whatever. You have to show what will be your business, how you're contributing to the society and the overall ecosystem and so on, and show what is in your business case, what is the gap? What is the gap to do this in Europe? And this is exactly the money you get. And by the way, this is the only way to get funding in Europe, because let's say aside the funding I mentioned on European level, there is a lot of regional funding also, but it will only flow if the European Commission gave you somehow a waiver that it is aligned with antitrust, that it's not antitrust, it's really supporting, and then you can also apply to a lot of regional funds. What does this mean? So let's assume that you are saying, hey, look, I'm doing an investment of 10 billion or 15 billion for a big fab in Europe. Yeah? And you're saying, hey, look, doing this has some drawbacks and some advantages, of course. We are doing this with these partners. This will be the applications and so on. And then you're saying, but doing this in Europe, because there's lacking the expertise, the wages are higher, whatever, we have a gap of this one. And probably let's assume this is 20 to 30% of gap. Then you can directly apply for funding schemes on this one. But this is not the rest of it. Then the question is, of course, hey, now you have the waiver for Europe, but where to do it in Europe? Yeah, this is obviously your free choice. Yeah, and so you can engage with the local governments and say, hey guys, look, what if we do it in the Silicon Saxony, or what if we do it in France, Italy, or wherever? Yeah, and engage with the local governments and say, hey, look, where are the areas and properties? We need clean water, we need this and this. How do we get access to the people? We need a small airport. I don't know what you need exactly. Yeah, we are actually doing this kind of programs. And then the local governments making you on top proposals that you get a special area for free, or there are restructuring areas. You know that there was also big coal areas where they have to pump clear water today, day and night, yeah. And we just found out that this water is perfectly usable for semiconductor. But as it was a restructuring of an old industry and has to be transformed now in a new digital industry, yeah. People are locally supporting this and saying, hey, you get the area for free, there is the water source, and if you need electricity with this and this quality, we help you to organize this. And even we will step in to get the employees on board and have programs to educate them, and I don't know what. Yeah. So at the end, you have to look to the overall package. And this is, I would say, in Europe, extremely interesting, because and that's probably also something that people sometimes feel is a disadvantage. You get, of course, challenged by the government. Yeah, is this sustainable? How you're doing this, how you're doing that, and so on. And people are feeling sometimes, okay, hey, what is this? But you can take this also for your advantage, because all these people are contributing and asking, at least to their view, the right questions to make your business a success and to make it sustainable.
Right. So it's about investment.
It's about investment.
It's looking for investing into the business which can drive growth for Europe.
Exactly.
I think we can discuss this interesting topic for all day long, but our time is limited. So I think, in the interest of time, I would like to hear your advice or recommendation to the Taiwanese business, because when I hear you, what I'm thinking is, if I want to do this, how can I do this? And Europe has a lot of countries. Now we're talking about European as a region, Europe as a region, but then how do I start? And maybe just to hear your advice to the Taiwanese business, and also I think what PwC can do to help the Taiwanese semiconductor sector.
Sure, very much appreciated. And Paulsen, let's probably start on, first of all, you have to identify, of course, what are the areas. And I guess Taiwan has a lot of strongholds in newest technologies and memory technologies. And I already gave you a hint on digital sovereignty, that this is the main concern, but also the main investment area of Europe. Yeah. So I guess to go this route is very, very simple. I try to explain that the route is not the route saying, hey, look, I'm just making there an investment and this is what I will do. You have to do it in collaboration and partnership and part of the ecosystem. Yeah, and also just believing, hey, look, I'm buying a company, doing some M&A and fix it or whatever. This is not what will work out for various reasons. Yeah, because it's not generating new value. It's not looking ahead. It's actually whatever. So build on your strongholds, what you want to do. Look to your applications and customers in Europe. Yeah, and ask for advice. Potentially PwC, but there are of course also other players that understand and support the government and the public services that are shaping this, that have stronger relations to main players in the European industry, not only in the semicon industry, but explained also in the application industry, and try to, let's say, find your way in what could be the bigger picture and how you will fit in. Yeah, and also to be very clear on all the funding in Europe, it's not written in stone. You are invited to bring your best and brightest ideas how you can contribute to this. Yeah, and let's say we are more than happy. We are helping a lot of clients, and I said we are helping to shape the programs with the governments. We are helping a lot of clients globally to understand the programs and exactly to identify how they could use it, how to team it up with partners and so on. We are even, let's say, exploring then with the specific ideas what the application and the funding could be in an informal way before finally filing all the programs. Even there, we could do this completely. We can even help you organizing, traveling through the nice European countries, visit the places where you could have your future factories or research centers or whatever. And even we are building factories out of the box, helping you getting the right people on the place and really starting the production. So let's say whatever would be your gap and where you feel insecure, you can reach for any help you can imagine on high level, but also really on the execution level. You're definitely not left alone. And by the way, there are also a lot of governmental funded institutions that are happy to help, normally with, let's say, a smaller focus. Yeah, that's the reason that you need at least one advisor that is looking to the complete picture, because they, of course, all have a special interest and a special focus and want to get you to a specific area or specific area in application or specific area in a region. Yeah. So let's say again, Taiwanese industry is more than welcome. I guess you have definitely key assets that are required, and more than welcome Europe. Not in the way, please come here, leave your stuff here and go ahead. No, we are looking for partnerships, for collaboration, for global collaboration, and bringing the complete society ahead.
Yes, of course. All right, thank you very much, Marcus, for your very valuable and insightful information. I'll make a just very quick recap in Mandarin to our audiences. 非常感谢那个所有的观众听众。那我想今天我们分享了很多Marcus 分享很多很宝贵的意见那我想这个大家常常都有这个错觉就是说欧盟啊或者是美国啊，其实都希望这个台湾的半导体产业去那边设厂投资那大家想的都是成本面，那这个欧盟怎么可能可以比得上台湾的这个成本？那我想今天 Marcus 跟我们分享一个很重要的观念，就是合作那欧盟想建立的是一个健康的生态系在这个半导体或者是比较更广的这个科技的整个产业面向。那我们都知道欧盟里面有非常多这个非常领先的产业，像是汽车产业那或者是感测器产业等等那机械产业。那我想台湾呢也有非常多在半导体这个层面上可以跟这个欧盟去合作的一个机会。那我们都知道欧盟现在这些这个所谓的晶片法案也好，或者是整个更大的这个补助计划，那在 Marcus 分享甚至有到1兆8千亿这么大的一个金额那对于外商像台商要进到欧盟投资，我想 PwC 这边能够提供给大家更多丰富的这些见解，那与政府之间的关系，那我们是第一手在跟着这些政府欧盟去建立这些这些法案的背景，那我们当然理解怎么样去协助公司呢在这样的一个角度上面，在欧洲布局可以有一些不同的一些观点还更顺利的去进行这样的一个计划。All right, thank you, Marcus.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we should say goodbye to everybody. Thank you very much. We should have you very quick and again with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.